Hello and welcome to Legendary Fishing Explanations this time. Now, this might be blasphemous for some of you bass anglers, but I'm going to tell you why I think fishing for carp and fishing for catfish is superior to fishing for bass. I actually find it a lot more fun. Yes, I know you like to cast around the little jigs. I like to as well, but generally, fishing for catfish and fishing for carp give me a much more of a rush. And there's a couple of reasons for that. A, because pound for pound, bass honestly suck at fighting. When you compare it to catfish or carp, bass are like lightweights. If you take a 2 pound bass and a 2 pound carp, and you ask which one fights harder, the carp fights much, much harder. So does the catfish. I've hooked, 2 pound bass and 2 pound carp, 2 pound catfish. The catfish and the carp pound per pound fight harder. I think the carp fights slightly harder than the catfish, but they're actually fairly close. But like a 2 pound bass, essentially a bass, if it jumps you, it basically jumps a couple of times and then it gives up essentially. When I pulled in like a 3 pound like smallmouth the other day on Pheasant Branch Creek, didn't get to weigh that one, but that was like probably more than the weight of double the weight of the 1.6 I actually pulled in later. When I pulled in the 3 pound smallmouth, it wasn't really that much of a fight. It was like it jumped like a couple times and then it was just kind of like dragging dead weight in. And then it was kind of hard because I was on a dock and I tried to scoop it up with a net. But generally, it honestly wasn't that hard to bring in. When I hook into like a 2 pound carp, man, it just like rolls over 10 times. It jumps, does everything. Like I have actually lost a lot more carp trying to reel a carp in than trying to reel a bass in. Once a bass jumps a couple times, it's basically over. But a carp, man, it fights like crazy. Of course, like I don't like 1 or 2 pound carp don't usually outfight me unless they just fall off the hook. But it takes a lot longer for me to reel them in than it does a bass. Same thing for catfish. Like some of those 1 or 2 pound catfish, it takes a couple of minutes for me to reel in. Whereas a bass, like 40, 50 seconds, it jumps once or twice, then I got the fish essentially. So that's one reason. I actually, since I'm a catch and release fisherman, I do it for the sport and the fun. I'm actually looking for a good fight. And carp and catfish give me a much, much better fight than a bass of the same size. The other thing is I can fish for carp and catfish with multiple poles. Now, I don't have a boat, so I don't troll. I do shore fishing for the most part, and you can't really, simultaneously cast and reel back 2 poles at the same time. Whereas carp and catfish, you just cast it out there, you wait, and then you recast it every once in a while. So you have more chances of hooking a fish. Actually, that's not true, but that's not true because I know ponds where I can just go and just catch largemouth bass at any time I want. Whereas carp and catfish is besides that one ditch that I know of, it's fairly random when I'll actually catch them. But like I can actually use more poles when I actually do carp and catfishing. The other thing is personal records. Now I have records for like each species of fish I actually catch. Oh, by the way, in terms of like fighting, pound for pound, sunfish actually fight a lot harder than carp. It's just that sunfish don't really get all that big. I mean, if there was like a 10 pound sunfish, trust me, you'd be in for a fight. But there are no 10 pound sunfish out there or bluegills out there. So you're not really all that in for a fight when you hook one of those things because they don't really get above half a pound a pound all that much. The third thing is personal records. So the thing is, I have like records obviously for each species, like PBs for each species I catch. But there's also this thing called like best personal freshwater fish, and that's like a big thing. That's actually a really, really big thing I try to actually get. And the thing is, when I was younger in Ithaca, like when I was like 5 or 6, like I remember going with my dad and his friends several times to actually fish for carp around Ithaca, and we pulled up some 20 pound carp or so. So for me, like to qualify as like I'm actually trying to make a new record right now because I haven't caught a 20 pound fish in the 2 months that I've actually been weighing fish. But to actually qualify as a PB fish, it has to be like 20 pounds or more. And the thing is, like, that's exciting for me. There is no hell of a way I'm going to catch a 20 pound bass in Wisconsin. The state record is only 11 pounds. Actually, like, it doesn't really matter where you are in the United States. Unless you count the peacock bass in Florida, there is no hell of a way I'm going to catch a 20 pound bass anywhere because they essentially don't exist. But when I go catfishing or carping, there is a real possibility that I will actually catch a 20 pound plus catfish or a 20 pound plus carp because those actually go over 20 pounds very often. Like if I go to Port Washington Harbor and target the carp in the harbor, there's a good chance I'll catch one over 20 pounds. Same thing for catfish. If I go to Indian Fort and target the flatheads, just catch a bluegill, use it as bait, target the flatheads, I might actually get one over 20 pounds. And I've seen people pull 20 plus pound catfish out of the Rock River. So those are the three reasons I actually find carping and catfishing much more interesting than bass fishing. I can fish for multiple poles at once. Pound for pound, carp and catfish fight much harder than bass. And three, they grow much bigger, and I can break a freshwater personal best because technically I'm never going to get a bass over 20 pounds. So that is the my opinion. Let me know if you agree. Like and subscribe, and let's go fishing sometime.